Hi, my name's Brianna. I was a part of Group 1, and the video that I watched for this assignment is about care to the trans and gender nonconforming identified patient. The video starts with a patient that is checking into a clinic. The patient was born female with the name of Josephine, however, now prefers the pronouns he, him to be called by the name Joe. The lady working at the front desk calls the patient to the counter using the name Josephine, and when the patient kindly corrects her of his wishes, she is very dismissive. She states that she'll have to speak to the clinic administrator regarding this name change in his records and then fails to notify the rooming staff with this change. Therefore, during Joe's second encounter in the clinic with the rooming staff, he again is called Josephine when being called back to the clinic from the waiting room. Joe again corrects the nursing tech, who then apologizes for calling the patient by the wrong name, however, continues to refer to Joe as a Miss instead of Mr. during the rooming process, which again is very dismissive and insensitive to the patient's rights and wishes. Finally, once the nurse enters the room with Joe, she is very inclusive of his wishes and apologizes for the two previous encounters in the clinic that he has experienced leading up to this point in the visit. The nurse is very honest with Joe that the clinic has a lot of learning to do in regards to culturally sensitive situations with patients, but by addressing the issue at hand, it establishes a more open and trusting relationship instead of being dismissive and brushing off the patient's feelings toward the initial two encounters he has had in the clinic thus far. She does a great job of explaining processes to the patient, demonstrating patient-centered care, and reporting off to the provider so that culturally competent care is provided to this patient through the entirety of this visit. Although there are multiple bioethical principles that could pertain to this specific scenario, the one I will focus on is justice. The ethical principle of justice encompasses fairness and equity. Justice addresses making healthcare decisions that are made for the greater good of society and that all patients are treated equally and with respect. During Joe's first two encounters with both the front desk and rooming personnel, the principle of justice is withheld from the patient. This is evident by their questioning, somewhat argumentative, culturally incompetent approach with Joe's care. Fortunately, when the nurse enters the scenario, justice is exemplified through her way of fair, honest conversation and sensitive patient care. Based on this video, there needs to be changes made at both the individual and systemic level within this clinic. At the individual level, I think individualized conversations should be had that are not scolding of the behavior, but more so understanding of where there may be experience and or knowledge gaps that are present. Do these individuals feel uncomfortable in these situations and not know how to approach these culturally sensitive conversations in a professional manner? Then some teaching could be very beneficial in closing these gaps. The patient mentions to the nurse at one point in the scenario that he is confused, as their paperwork prior to his clinic visit was very progressive, allowing him to denote his name and pronoun preference. However, the staff's behavior did not reflect this. Therefore, at a systemic level, I think ensuring that there is a process in place for confirming that the completed patient paperwork matches the patient's chart so that their wishes are consistently communicated. Additionally, ensuring the paperwork includes options such as partner instead of spouse and includes transgender or wish to not disclose as options under the gender section. For example, I know in Epic there's a place under patient demographics that you can put a patient's legal name and what they prefer to be called as their preferred pronouns. This ensures that culturally sensitive care is provided from the time the patient checks in to the clinic at the front desk throughout their entire clinic visit. Finally, culturally insensitive care can lead to health disparity. Disparity can exist in a particular race, gender, sexual identity, financial class, or geographic location. Reasons for disparity that is present for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning LGBTQ patients include social stigma, discrimination, and lack of healthcare providers that specialize in transgender care. Healthy People 2020 listed improvement in care for LGBTQ individuals as a goal. Additionally, efforts were brought forward by the Human Rights Campaign that created a Healthcare Equality Index, otherwise known as HEI. HEI is a benchmarking tool that uses specific criteria to score a healthcare facility on their ability to provide non-judgmental care and a welcoming and inclusive place for the LGBTQ community to receive medical care. The HEI scores public information so that individuals that are seeking this care can find a facility that will be sensitive to their medical situation needs. Although I have witnessed some improvement made with cultural competence in patient care since the posting of this original video, at my own place of work and through my clinical rotations, there is still a lot of room for improvement. As soon to be providers ourselves, I think it is very important to become familiar with the terms used within the LGBTQ community, such as gender identity versus sexual orientation, understanding treatment options such as hormone therapy and surgical interventions, as well as the health risks related to these options, and ultimately providing respectful, equal care to these patients as they often face substantial challenges within our society.